Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am filming a video that was requested by a super lovely viewer. It is dating as an exchange student. I know that when you're an exchange student it is super exciting to date because first of all, you know, you're probably between 14, 15 to 18 years old. You are coming to a new country, you know, with boys that you've never met before that might look different or speak a different language or just might seem different from the boys you've met at home, or girls equally, you know, whatever your preference is. It is going to be very tempting to just get right on into the dating world. However, I do feel like there are certain things that you have to keep in mind before you get into the dating world, especially if you are in a new culture as an exchange student. So today I'm going to give you all of my tips that I have when it comes to dating as an exchange student and during your study abroad. So the first thing I would like you to know when you're dating in a foreign country as an exchange student is that you are very likely to be way more desirable than you would be in your home country. Me, as a German girl in Germany, I was just the same as everybody else. You know, I kind of dressed the same, I was kind of interested in the same things, I kind of looked the same. And so going to the US, the first thing I noticed was that a lot more boys were super interested in me. Just because, you know, I went to a small high school in a small town in Texas and they didn't get a lot of exchange students. Obviously, a lot of boys were super interested. First, because you're the new girl, which already makes you interesting, and also because you're an exchange student, so you look different, you have made, you know, different experiences, you come from a foreign place, which they find exciting, your language is different, you might have an accent, which they usually find very cute, so you are probably going to be experiencing a lot more attention from the opposite sex. So just be aware that this is a phenomenon that you're probably going to be experiencing. With that comes that you should be aware of the fact that it might not be that they are interested in you because of you, like because of your personality or anything like that, but that they might just be kind of superficially interested in you being a foreigner. So just keep that in mind, kind of be able to separate the two things. With that said comes my tip number 2, that you should be aware of the fact that people might place bets on you and are going to talk about you a lot in that respect. So I actually later found out that a lot of boys would place bets on who could get me to go out on a date with them. So that is something that I would have never experienced in my home country, but that is going to be something that you might experience in your target country, especially if you're going to a small school. It is almost going to be like a competition, so just be aware that sometimes it isn't as serious, it's more of a game, so be super careful. Equally, if you do, you know, develop feelings for someone or you think someone is cute and you do end up going on a date with them, be aware of the fact that a lot of people are going to brag about that later on and tell a lot of stories and kind of just share a lot of details on how the date went. Especially boys, teenage boys, they are going to brag to their friends a lot, and not just that they tell about the things that actually happened, but they might really exaggerate things and say that you kissed them when you really didn't, you touched them and you really didn't. So be very careful, maybe have a date in a very public place and do not move fast at all, because that could really, you know, create some stories that you don't want spread about yourself. The third thing that I would advise you to do is to have a very open and honest conversation with your host family. If there is somebody that you're interested in, you know, you don't have to give all of the details, you don't necessarily have to let them know who it is, because when you're still developing those feelings as a teenager, I know this is hard to talk about, but just let them know, hey, there is someone I'm interested in that I would like to go out on a date with. Maybe offer for them to get to know that person for maybe just 10 minutes, you know, have that talk in the kitchen so that they feel secure that they can let you go out with that person. Also have a conversation about house rules, like can you have that person over? Can you have that person in your room? Most host families would probably not want a person of the opposite sex in your room, but just, you know, discuss those ideas. When's your curfew when you're going out on a date? Do you need to go out on a date in a group, for example? Just have an open conversation so that both parties can feel very comfortable. I think another thing you should also be aware of is that your host family is responsible for you, especially when it comes to dating. There is always the possibility of you getting someone pregnant or you getting pregnant. They are responsible for you and they never want to be be in a position where your biological parents at home could be disappointed that they didn't actually, you know, watch out enough for you and for your own well-being. So just be aware that they do have a lot of responsibility of taking care of you, making sure you're okay, both physically and mentally. So, you know, have that conversation with them, make them feel safe, and listen to what they tell you, because they are adults and they have a lot more experience when it comes to that. And so yeah, just have an open conversation. Connected to that is my tip number 4, and it is to protect yourself, because as I just mentioned, you know, nobody ever wants to really talk about that, but when you are, you know, falling in love, especially as a teenager, and your feelings are going super crazy, and maybe you're not even planning on it, but there is always the possibility of getting pregnant or getting somebody pregnant. So really make sure, you know what you're doing. Best thing is probably not to do it at all, but if it does end up happening, it is important that you are educated and that you know how not to create babies when you don't want them. It depends on the country you're going to, but there are a lot of different levels of how sexually educated people are. I know that in the US, for example, in Texas, there wasn't really that much sexual education in school, so, you know, the teenagers believed a lot of myths or just didn't know how to not have a baby when they were having sex because nobody would tell them. And so, you know, you can't always trust the other person that you're sleeping with to know how to not have babies. So you need to make sure that you're educated on how to prevent any of that, and not just babies, but also, you know, STDs, like sexually transmitted diseases and everything like that. Make sure to know what you're doing and to protect yourself. My next tip is tip number 5, and it is to be aware of cultural rules. So when I was in the States in Texas, there was the term PDA, so the public display of affection. It was a term I had never heard of before, and here in Germany, for example, it is a lot more common for like young couples to maybe make out in school, or for like a girl to sit on her boyfriend's lap during the lunch break. None of that was acceptable at all. In my high school in Texas, even holding hands wasn't really welcome. You know, there was barely maybe a hug, no kissing in school or anything like that. So rules do differ a lot, you know, when it comes to what you can do with your partner, especially in public, but also in private. So just make sure to educate yourself and not to display your affection overly. Don't make out in school. Don't, you know, do footsie under the table in the restaurant. Just certain things that are not supposed to be shown in public ever. So, you know, just educate yourself. Actually, if you want me to make like a special video just about that, because there are like a lot of rules I could talk about, let me know down in the comments below. My last kind of a tip, kind of just something I would like to let you know from my own personal experience, is if you can avoid dating, I would, simply because with dating there are a lot of complications. All of the things I've mentioned before, you know, there might be a lot of conflict involved in that with your host family, with, you know, your partner that you chose, and just also with like friends at school, for example, because, you know, somebody else might have a crush on that person as well. It might be someone's ex, and so there's a lot of potential for conflict there anyway. Plus, you also need to be aware of the fact that there is kind of like an inevitable heartbreak at the end, because there is a deadline. You already know you're going to leave, unless you're maybe 18 and could possibly stay in the country, but then you would break your parents' heart, for example. So there is always going to be like a doom hanging over your relationship. You're always going to know that you are going to leave. A lot of the time that ends in heartbreak. I did date in the US, and I wouldn't say that I necessarily regret it, but I do have a lot of negative experiences connected to it, because it was, you know, a lot more difficult than it would have been if I had just dated someone back home. You can do it, and sometimes I know as a teenager, when you develop feelings and when the other person is feeling the same way, it is very hard to stay away from each other and to just ignore these things. You can form beautiful relationships out of that, but just be super aware that it is a whole different culture that you're dating in, and a very special position that you're dating in. So I would say my main tips would be awareness, protection, and maybe communication. I think those are the 3 keys to making it work and to just making sure that everybody feels comfortable. So whether you're an exchange student or maybe even a member of a host family, and you have any sort of questions or things you would like me to talk about considering this topic or anything else in the exchange student realm, then please let me know down in the comments below. I would be so happy to make another video like this, or maybe a dating Q&A or any other Q&A that I'm filming for my viewers. I am so happy that you decided to take the time out of your day to watch watched this video. If you like this content and you never want to miss out on any of my future content, also make sure to hit the notification bell as well as the subscribe button so you never miss out on any of my future videos and are always notified when I post next. And that's all I have to say for today. Thank you guys so much and see you in next week's video. Bye!